You've just entered through a door into another dimension. Not one for the faint of heart or the solid shut mind. The journey on which you've embarked cannot be stopped, only experienced. A challenge, a single word, was given to 6 different artists of varying mediums. These stories, their psyches, may just change the very fabric of your reality. So, sit back, open your eyes. Our next stop, fear.
So currently, me and my wife Shelby are in Croatia, in Dubrovnik. I've been thinking a lot about how to create this project based around fear. And this is a pretty menacing castle. The ocean is such a good analogy for so many things, but particularly like the fear of God. It's really powerful and unknown and extremely scary to be in, but also like super incredibly beautiful and deep, both literally and symbolically. I've been trying to get this bucket shot over the water, so I think I'm gonna try to do that on sunrise one of these days when the castle is kind of like clouded, like dark, and looks very menacing, but also I'm hoping the water will kind of add to that to make it something that's even more menacing and kind of like surreal in a way. So we'll see what I can do with that.
That is stunning. No, I love the choice of black and white. I love just how immense it feels, but then once you're up above it, it's also very close together.
The first thing I thought was like, oh, this is like a Hitchcock opening. Like the way the drones go and the way sort of the asymmetrical syncopation, the music as well. And I really love that long dissolve that happens around like 21. That has super long, like, oh, that's a film dissolve sort of feeling.
For what it's worth, for 2 shots, they had really good pacing for it being over a minute of these 2 shots. I was like fully engaged in like what I was seeing. If that was the trailer, if it was just that, and like a title, and I saw it in a theater, this one I'd be like, I'm gonna go see that one alone. And now I'm mad that film doesn't exist.
Something about when you panned down to the water and the darkness kind of began to creep in, there was just this suspenseful nature to it that was like provoking. I don't even know how to describe that experience, but as I was sitting there, I was like, I don't know what I'm about to see, but I don't know if I want to see it. My mind went so many different places, and I was like, it could be like really deep, like what are my fears? Or it could be like, what does fear mean? Examples of fear that we see in culture, like phobias. Like it just, as is the case with any word that has a lot of meaning, it's like it could go a lot of different directions. So I was like pretty set on doing like a rendition of a painting that's been done by a famous artist and then like applying modern interpretations of fear to that. And as I was working on like sketching that, a cockroach ran across the floor and I lost my mind. And I was like, that's fear. And I've been really interested in manga recently. And so I was like, I'm gonna make a manga scene. So I spent a good chunk of the last week just trying to learn, at least to some degree, the manga style. That's what it felt like. And that's what fear is to me.
I love the stance of the cockroach. It conveys so much, and it is in the exaggeration of our, fears and stuff, but like that's already so cool. I love this.
In real life, you see this cockroach, it's just usually like a little like oval almost. But like, what would this look like if this was Attack on Titan? I like the story behind how you even got there. Just the whole word bubble, and then having a real scare.
With fear.
I really appreciated your whole the story you told of like your journey of, I think it's really cool to see like how you pivoted and was like, okay, like I want to try this, and now I have this experience that I can now express via this like art style. I think it's really fun.
I've had so much fun with this project because one thing about making music, you can feel like you can kind of run into ruts of like, oh, I'm using the same, instruments for everything. I'm using the same attitudes as inspiration. So it's been really cool to be given like a singular word, and that almost kind of gives me a color palette to work with. And they've all just been very strong inspirations. One of my side projects is like lo-fi chill study beats, and that mixed with fear is kind of a funny thing.
Yeah.
Immediately, my brain went to like haunted house. I found this cool atmosphere thing. That's what we're hearing. When I went to haunted house in my brain, I immediately went like a waltzy 3/4. I don't know why that is associated with like spooky ghosts, but it just kind of is in my brain. There are those strings that I talked about. This has like a nostalgic feel to me, maybe because of where a lot of the sounds came from. And then this to me feels a little Bowser's Castle-y to keep the like N64 thing going. Something I forgot to talk about is coming in just a second. I never get to do guitars like I'm about to do in this song, and I love that I got an excuse to do it. There are these enormous distorted guitars. They're kind of in the background. I'll solo them in a second. It just kind of felt like it filled this hole that I had sonically, but also fits in with some of the impending doom that I was going for. Like, I feel like there's lava here, and I don't know why. And then we get a little break here. That little keyboard part feels a little 80s like horror movie to me, and I thought that was also kind of fun. It's based off of a Juno. And we get to kind of breathe for a second before hearing the other sample. And then we're back with everything but the piano. Up high, I have this just drone note throughout the whole thing, and it to me adds another tension element, which is funny because I usually use it as glue to kind of pull things together and almost not be noticed, but here I have a little bit higher, the level's a little bit higher, and so it kind of is just hanging over your head this whole time. And it's interesting, I don't necessarily consider this similar to my lo-fi stuff, but the formula is kind of similar. I don't think this feels as relaxing. I don't know if I'm trying to do like study chill sessions to this song, but I like how it came out. And we just kind of land the plane here. I was so happy with that Juno sound. And we fade.
That just resonated with me on such a deep level. My gosh, this is like my childhood coming back.
Consistently, constantly impressed. That one I feel like has so many use cases where I would see that just on one of your albums, but maybe even when that one came on, I might like take like a break, just like be like, oh shoot, or like drop it. As well as I feel like this would be a really cool lead up to the boss battle.
Your excitement and passion for what you do comes out in all of it, from like talking about the process to sharing the actual music to the breakdown. Like all of it is so cool. That being said, the actual song Boo is something about it is very fulfilling to me.
I was also thinking it would be good for like whenever we play like board games and stuff like that are like easy to have that in the background, because we're always looking for like music to put on. I'm not saying you should make a whole album for that, but maybe you should make a whole album. Getting over like a lot of fear of like failure. I struggle a lot with like perfectionism. In my mind, it's like a deep battle for me. Like anything that I do, I'm like, if it's not perfect, then I like really rag on myself, and I think I give myself a hard time. With that, I did a self-portrait you guys can open. For this, like I wanted to represent like kind of letting go of like, oh, I'm not gonna do like my makeup full out so that I like my skin looks good, or like I'm not gonna like edit those like pimple scars out of the photo, or like making sure like my hair like looks like nice and brushed or curled or whatever. Like I think just like letting go of like all of that was kind of representing to me right now, and kind of like where I've been in my life.
I love the way that people like interpret these different words, and like there are just so many ways to associate different emotions with this. And I think this is so cool. And like you said, perfectionism is really just a fear. And I think this is such a cool way to approach this.
I don't think I perceive perfectionism as fear, and then your whole explanation of that, it's like, oh my gosh, it's totally driven by this sense of how will this be received. But I just love the vulnerability that you took in this, of one, like owning a fear that you personally have, because this is such a beautiful way to illustrate that. Like it's moving me in like pretty significant ways of feeling like, wow, to like put out your vulnerability like that, not only in like how you explained the fear, but then also in taking pictures of yourself, where it is like the spotlight is such an incredible way of conveying like what perfectionism and creativity feel like hand in hand.
A different kind of primal fear from Gigi, almost ingrained animalistic fear of just like, oh, it just scares you that cockroaches scare people.
Ew, yucky.
And like that's a very just completely natural fear, and that's what her project was born out of, and so is how we view ourselves and present ourselves is scary, especially in an age of social media where you can proctor all images and present your best self with every adventure you've ever gone on, and wow, my life is so great.
I'm gonna try to make a horror film completely by myself. No director, no actor, no gaffer, no sound, just me.
Sounds good.
Terrifying.
The lighting in that is so sick. Like the way that you had the light hit like part of your face, and like the tension that you had with the pacing.
You should like clearly do a feature. I wouldn't watch it because horror is just like, it's like spicy food. I just can't do. Won't be able to sleep now.
Yeah, I really like the idea of like, we're a little bit scared when we turn off like lights individually, if it's office, home, whatever. So I think it's like, oh, okay, it's just like that feeling of fear. Okay, that's really good feeling of fear. But then it wasn't until that actually like, oh shoot, there's actually something there that I was like, oh, okay, all right, that's the conclusion that I was like looking for. It was really good, really good.
I'm just very impressed. I literally was like asleep in bed and you came home at 3 a.m. and you were like, I just shot a horror film. I'm like, cool, I was sleeping.
Well, Maddie, your background right now, that office is your office. What they have in that office is even at night, there is just constant pop music playing. So I had to just ditch all audio that I gotten on set and just completely replace everything with Foley, with sound effects libraries, with me on my microphone.
Ridiculous.
I'm simultaneously the worst candidate and also probably the best candidate for watching a horror film. I'm absolutely terrified by anything and everything scary. And that had my heart racing the whole time. The fact that you came up with not only a concept, but then actually acted it, created it, and brought it to fruition in this time span is incredible.
I guess for me, a little background. So my wife's a teacher. And so having the idea of fear, I think really relates to the idea of like school shootings and stuff. Especially being like the husband of a teacher. I think it's definitely a different perspective instead of like, just hearing about it on the news.
Was abruptly paused as masses of people ran away.
About this school shooting in Texas where a gunman killed.
Oh, he said bro.
I think there's always that moment where I kind of like wait for a text message or a call. I think that's just consistent like underlying fear that I have pretty much when I wake up, which is it's like very like sad thing for me to like say, but it's I hope that I don't like think about it a lot or it's something that I don't have to worry about, but it's something that I do process a little bit. I think this idea came from when one time it was actually at Biola University. There was actually a gunman like notification that happened on school campus, and there was like email going out, and then I got a call from Sarah saying like, oh my god, someone's in the library. I'm in the library right now. We're barricading the doors right now. It just freaked me out. But I think ever since then, I think I just sort of kind of had that thought process, especially with just the influx of what's happening right now too. So
I loved the shot too of when the text came in, like the fear of what it could be, and then at least that's how I interpreted it, and then the realization of what it actually was. And I think what in my opinion at least made that so cool is that oftentimes fear is captured in like one moment, like what if this one thing happens, and not necessarily this attitude of like fear can be this prevalent thing hanging over you always, especially when it's something that's out of your control. To capture that kind of fear in the way that you did, I think was very, very well done and very creative.
I like the way that you captured it as a short film. I like the way that you kind of edited it all together, almost like the person is just flipping through Twitter. Just that's almost all you see is just one after the other, which it feels like you're just scrolling through and there's another one, all these schools. And the way that you put that together drives home the point of, I think, the way that it feels to have it happen so often. It is a lot of people's fear, but it's also your personal fear as a husband to a teacher. It helped me, I think, empathize. Your perspective.
I appreciate the vulnerability. Also, I just don't think about school shootings from that like perspective. You're always thinking about like, oh, this kid came from this horrible background and that's why he's doing these things or whatever it is. But you don't think about like, oh, there's so many ramifications that happen to the community, but also like the spouses of the people that are teaching there. And to live in that is like super challenging, I would imagine. If I was reading that on paper where I was like, oh, well, spouses are really anxious about their spouses being teachers, like that doesn't grab me as quickly and like as emotionally as this did.
Now I'm gonna cry, but like I think that like it was something too that was like really powerful is like it's not necessarily like showing like your face or like your emotions in that regard, but just like feeling the intensity of like, oh, like my phone dinged and I think I know what it could say, and like how like intense that feeling was.
Yeah.
This also hits really close to home because literally just this week a friend of mine like drove past a school shooting in their neighborhood, and we're just like still processing through what that means. I guess I appreciate that you creatively brought this to light and that you didn't shy away from what it really truly is most of the time, that it's not associated with comedy. It can't be lightened by fun, happy things. Sometimes it just is scary situations, and the reality of our world is that we live in fear of things that happen regularly. And so it even raises the question of like, what do we do? Like these things that scare us, how do we approach them? How do we prevent them? Yeah, so there's a lot there. Thank you.
The first word we did was like love, and I feel like while I love like the different ways we all took that, specifically with those words, you saying like, I love my wife is a lot easier to tell someone than to communicate your fear of losing the person. Is a much more intimate thing to share with somebody. And I appreciate your art for being a vulnerable piece. And all art, I think, is when you show someone is a vulnerable thing because you put so much work into it, and all art is a piece of somebody, a piece of the artist. And to share what you've created is very vulnerable and very open to how people react to it. You know, it can really affect you because that's a piece of you. So I thank all of you guys for sharing, for being vulnerable, and for creating things for this project, for something that is not necessary to do, but continuing in a third episode, and for joining in for the third episode to take on the challenge, to create something, to show it, to be a part of something. I appreciate it, and I hope that this has I don't know, some kind of effect on a single person.